I'll start with let the tears fall. Let the tears fall. That is a natural way that God included in our bodies to get rid of, to free us of. And we see that as a sign of weakness. Let them fall. Don't worry about the source. Don't worry why you're crying. Don't figure it out. God knows. If you have to, and I promise you, some of the cleansing, most lifting times is when I just cried. And, even to this day, there are moments that I knew it felt dark, but when I cried and I let it till I couldn't cry no more, I probably was dehydrated, I cried. But to feel that everything was all right, that release, it's natural. I think people think because you cry, you've given up, you're giving in. It doesn't mean that. That's a natural release. So cry, and don't quell it. Don't get a box of Kleenex and cry. Don't go with a clean, because that's, when you cry and you trying to wipe, you messing up what God is trying to do. Just release it. And just let it flow.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to When the Moment Chooses You. I am your host, Coach Charlene, and I'm extremely excited today to have Dr. Natashia with us, and she's going to tell us a little bit more about herself. But welcome to the show, Natashia.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm so excited that you're here. I've been trying to get her for a minute, so I'm super excited that we finally made that connection. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to read a little bit of your bio, and then I'll ask you, so you can kind of tell us a little bit more about you. So Dr. Natashia Stafford Cotton is a native of Portland, Oregon, who has lived the majority of her life in Northern California. She has a doctorate and master's degree in industrial and organizational psychology from Walden University, MBA concentration, executive business management, and a BA in behavioral science from National University. Dr. Stafford Cotton is married and has 3 children and 3 dogs.
4 children.
Okay, 4 children. Oh my gosh, you are a fruitful lady, and look at you birthing all of these dreams as well. So welcome to the show again. And can you tell us a little bit more about who you are?
Sure. I am a PK for life. So I am one of 6 girls. And so I'm second to the oldest. I am, more than just a corporate person. I guess a PK, I should share that I sing, and, my sisters and I have done albums. So it's kind of a well-rounded thing, singing, teaching, speaking. But of course, as you get older, you kind of just settle into my career and family mode. So I don't do as much of those things anymore, but definitely I'm a church girl at heart.
Oh, that's awesome. And for those that don't know, what is PK?
Oh, a pastor's kid.
So we know. That's awesome.
It's a culture.
Yeah. Hey, I knew it was something about you when I met you because you carry this presence with you. So it's pretty awesome. So, Natashia, I kind of started this podcast. It actually came out of a dream that I had in 2020. Not really a physical dream, but, how sometimes God puts things on your heart to do. And so during that moment when the murder of George Floyd happened, I went into prayer, and then I heard these words: what you do in this moment will determine your destiny and dictate your future. And so I knew it was going to have to be me taking ownership of myself and moving from the anger and the anguish to action. And that's literally what I started doing. I started speaking up like never before. But then the thought about sharing stories kept coming to me. And so I finally was able to launch this a couple years later. And it has been an absolute awesome journey. And I really think that there's moments that call us into them. And so that's what I want to unpack here today is your story and what moment called you. So was there a particular moment that called you into it?
I think about this, and thank you for sharing that. I was wondering how this wonderful movement came about, and just the when the moment chooses you, that is profound. And, like you said, when God gives you something, that alone just spoke to me. It speaks to others, and they're like, wow, when the moment chooses you. I think I've had several moments in my life, but this particular moment and why I'm here and at this particular point in my journey is August 10th, 2012, when my husband was diagnosed with cancer. And I was the person who got the call. I was the person who, as a manager, as a, older sister, I'm the boss,
Yes.
in different ways, right? People come to me and I'm like, I got it. I handle it.
Yes.
So I'm the unspoken, commander in chief of the family. So, I have always somehow been groomed that way. But when the moment, when I got that phone call and hung up, there's a lot of story before that. So I'll let you, read the book. But when I got that call, I had to make a decision. And that decision in that moment was, do you trust God? Everything that you've known up to this point, do you trust God or do you flip out? Mm. And in that brief moment, I knew that it's pointless to flip out, right? But also in leading my family, like, it was something I questioned, like, God, what if my husband doesn't have enough faith, right? I'm a PK, so I breathe, live, and, sleep church. Yeah. So for me, I'm like, oh, what if, he's not strong enough? What if his mother and his family, like, they are, of the same faith. However, you know what I mean? It's a little bit different when you're behind the scenes, and my grandfather's a bishop on my mother's side, and my grandfather on my dad's side was an evangelist. And so it's all I know. It's all I know. So that moment I said, okay, God, I'm going to do what I know, and contrary to working in healthcare and, I had to dissect that hat and not get lost in the information and all the data. So that moment I decided and I planted my feet and I said, we're going to do this because I don't believe God brought me to this point for it to end this way.
Oh, wow. That is so powerful. So you get the diagnosis and then you make a decision to fight. That's yes. Pretty awesome. That's good because I've heard that, that moment when a diagnosis or whatever comes to you, that's like the defining moment right there. So you can either embrace it fully and accept the bad news, or you can embrace it fully, listen authentically and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do about this. So that's awesome. Yeah. So tell us a little bit more because, during life, we get these challenges. And I was looking at your book and I love I want to know how you came up with the title, Keep Your Kleenex.
Oh, this is, believe it or not, there's a lot to go into why it looks a certain way. And I will try to unpack this. So like you said, when God gives you something, right? Initially I had a whole different title, a whole different concept, but when I got to the end of writing it and I started to think about some of the most trying times, some of the most difficult times, some of the most wonderful, exuberant times, it would lend me to tears, right? And I'm not by nature someone who cries a lot. My family will tell you, if Tasha cries, it's really it's something really going on. She's really mad, or it's just too much, or this is not an occurrence. And it's interesting because, when I was writing, I remember several times when I was sharing my story inadvertently to someone, instantly, when they felt the emotion, they would say, oh, let me get you a Kleenex. And, even sometimes that's just a natural thing to do, right?
Yes.
You want someone that you want to wipe away what is naturally, building in us. And God created us that way. Tears are representative to me of my liquid prayers. Sometimes I didn't know why I was crying. I remember once right after the diagnosis, I was praying and then, in prayer, I cried so much and I didn't know the source of the tears. I didn't know if I was angry, if I was afraid, if I was sad. And God spoke to me, and you don't have to know the source. When you're a child, people ask you, why are you crying? Mm-hmm. You always ask, we know something's wrong. Tell me what's wrong. Why are you crying? And, I let the tears fall. There's something in letting those liquid prayers fall when you can't utter words. And also, people want to, when you cry, instantly want you to stop that. Stop here.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm saying, you know what? Keep your Kleenex. Let my tears fall. Because in these tears, I'm telling my story. It means I'm passionate and that I'm alive. And it also, I believe God treasures each tear. He knows everything about me. So let my tears fall. Keep your Kleenex.
Wow. Natasha, that was really powerful, actually. I was thinking about also with Keep Your Kleenex. I remember when, we just went through something similar about 3 years ago, and it felt like people were, instead of the encouragement, it was like they were kind of helping you to die in a sense.
Absolutely.
And so did you experience any of that as well?
Absolutely. People was coming out the woodworks. People, I had known my husband at that point, maybe 10, 11 years. Cousins were dropping by. Like, people wanted to come, and the first thing they wanted to do is say, "Oh my gosh, I'm sorry." And I had to stop that because I'm like, I don't know whose report you believe, or but we're not letting this become every topic of conversation.
Right.
People want to come visit, and the first thing they do is say, "Oh my God," and they want you to retell it. How did you find out? And they keep you in that moment. I'm like,
Yes.
we're past that, and I had to shut it down, honestly. And I talk about that in the book because people want you to relive the most devastating day of your life. And they may be coming from a good place because they want to have empathy and they want to, let you know here. But I'm like, we've passed that, and I'm not going to keep retelling this because we're trying to move forward.
Yes.
We're future minded. So when you take me back and ask me, what is this and what did they say, and and I'm like, oh no, we have to shut this down because it was taking me backwards and forwards, and And truthfully, even writing this book was cathartic, but it was also very emotional because I remember that day and I'll never forget it. And here it is, I'm almost 11 years past it, and I'm still in that journey. And sometimes, people still want to say, wow, well, are you nervous? It's been so much time. Do they say, like, we're not going to talk about anything that's going to put him in the grave or put me under,
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And you protect your peace at all costs. It's at all costs.
Oh my God. That right there, protecting your peace at all costs. So I wonder, so you have explained about you were hoping that your husband had the same faith as you and things like that. So how did that go? How did that journey go? Did you have to be the one that had to gird up and do whatever you needed to do to protect yours?
Yes. Listen, when you think about it, and I also talk about this, listen, this book is it's a little thin, but I'm telling you, it's packed. I get right to it. I talk about everything in my life up to that point led me to that moment. Being the pastor's kid, being, the one to understand, and Sunday school and all the lessons and every scripture. In that moment, I realized it's kind of like a tag team fight. Yeah. I knew I would be in the ring, right? Much more than he would because we're one. But I needed him to sit on the outside and just rest because he took that hit and it didn't knock him out. He took that first hit in the round. And I said, we can't lose too many rounds and still win the scorecard. So I knew it. And you know what? It was it's interesting. And I talk about this in the book. He would tell me sometimes, can I just talk to my wife? Do you have to be spiritual? Do you have to give me a message? And he I said, no, I can't do it. I cannot sit in any type of negative, natural, let my mind wander. I tell you, you don't want that. Once I go down that road, there's no turning back. I said, I cannot. And we would have contentious conversations. And he was like, I just need my wife. I don't need Shirley Caesar. I don't need I said, I'm sorry. This is who God made me. And listen, I cannot, I will not, because after everything you say, I say, but God. And everything he says, I said, but there was a time when he said, why me? There's a lot of people who lived healthier than me, or they made better choices. Look at your dad. He's a pastor doing all these great things. Why would God save me? And I said boldly and simply, because I prayed, because I asked him. And when you choose a wife, we think about that when God said, when a man findeth a wife, he findeth a good thing. But it also talks about he findeth favor. Yes. When you know that the favor of God is on your life, and it was before this, I knew this, right? Like I said, I have a journey and things within my life that I said, I know there's God and no one can change that. No one. Once you have your own prayer that you prayed that no one else could do, no one else could answer, no one else could solve, and God comes through, there's nothing and no one who can tell me he isn't real. So I had already had my up close and personal a long time ago. Mm-hmm. And so I told him because I prayed and I asked God. And I would like to say to people, don't sleep on your mother's prayers, your grandmother's prayers, even your prayer. I prayed on my children's behalf. Lord, they need their father here. I need she was then almost 2-year-old to know her father. I don't want to raise these kids by myself.
Yeah.
Lord, I believe that. And I proclaimed it from that day. And so, I had to be the one. And even sometimes I still have to remind him, this is your testimony, but it's you got the diagnosis and you might have the disease, but it's our diagnosis. Actually.
Right. Yeah. Wow. You said so much powerful stuff. I think what's so significant, you said that there were moments in your life that prepared you for that moment. Really prepared you. And I think that's so beautiful because, everybody wants to not go through anything. But how do we get stronger? How do we get the wisdom that we need? How do we lean into God like we've never leaned into him before? So that was such a profound statement because things are going to happen. Challenges are going to come. But you are pretty tough. I ain't going to lie. You are... You are really tough. And I like how you were protecting your peace and staying on guard regardless, even when you had to help him to say, look, I'm standing in the gap here. I'm going to, if you can't fight, I'm fighting for you. So that's so profound, Natashia. So tell us a little bit more now. Writing a book is not easy. Like, how did you do it?
I think it's along the lines of what you said. When God gives you something and he lays it on your heart, you have to do it. It just comes together. And honestly, I started it when he first got diagnosed. I didn't necessarily start a book. I started a journal, a little bit of notes, right? I'm very organized. And so there was a lot of information coming at me in those first few weeks, right after the diagnosis. And I would jot down little prayers in between, little thoughts. And I would write it in between all the directives because, again, I was the family spokesperson. I had to disperse information to, my in-laws and everyone because, it was moving fast, and I started it to just empty my mind sometimes in moments. I would hear some things that would cause me to have some concern. And immediately I would give it to God and say, Lord, everything that they just said would happen. I know that you can make sure nothing adverse happens, right? And so I put it away, though, after a while, because we got very involved with treatment, medications and compliance and appointments, and I put it away. But God, he kept it in my heart, and he would say, you need to talk about this deliverance that's happening. You need to do it. And, I went to school and I talk about why I chose to go back to school, right? Maybe 6 months after his diagnosis, I went back to school to get the PhD. And I was thinking, I'll do it. I'll tell it. And what happened is that every time I would share with staff or, God would lead me to tell, a young lady or a mother struggling or someone, look, this is what I'm going through. You show up every day. And I would tell them a little bit and they would just be in awe. Like, there's no way you're going through this and you show up the way you do every day. You come to work, you smile, you encourage me. I mean, you're going through this. It was unbelievable. I would tell this to people in church because I didn't, here's the thing. This just came to me. When people say I've given it to God and I'm a Christian and I believe that I'm serving the Most High, then they shouldn't be able to look at you and tell something's wrong. Because if you really have that faith, they shouldn't be, I should be different, right? Than someone who has zero belief and zero understanding or that connectivity with God. So when I gave it to him, I gave it to him. So they would just be like in denial and disbelief and like, you guys don't look like you go through anything, like your husband looks, and we don't look like what we've been through, and I would tell them, that is the peace that surpasses all understanding, and so then when the reactions I would get from people, even my family members, distant cousins and things, and they would be like, what? and so that's when I knew the story was bigger. It was bigger than me. Right.
Yes.
And I still thought, I'll get to it. When I finished school, the Lord just put it on me every day. He was like, now you're done with school. It's been 10 years since your husband's diagnosis in 2022. You need to get the story, get the testimony out. Now, the writing of it wasn't hard because it's my lived in experience. What was hard about writing a book is I'm a really private person, believe it or not. And so, man, sharing in a raw, real way, because that's the only way I could do it, I really wasn't comfortable, to be honest. A lot of times I would read it, rewrite it, and like, oh, let me not say that or leave that out, or that's too personal, or, so that is where the hardest part, being transparent. I'm from the generation, whatever, go in your house, keep, stay in your house.
Yes. Yep.
So I feel like, oh Lord, I didn't told the business. So for me, and it was funny because I remember telling my sister once I hit the last sin and the edited and it was done, I said, oh my God, people really gonna know my business. I'm just,
yes.
So I'm still a little bit, unnerved, like, if you would, or I feel a little anxious about that, because now I can't dial back and be as private as I guess I used to be. Right. But that's, when it's God and you're doing something that's a bigger purpose than you kind of have to walk into it and his will, not mine.
Yeah, exactly.
It's 100% his will, because I am nothing special without him. There's many people that get diagnosed, many people who, have an experience, but in this day, 21st century, people tend to think miracles really only happen, rarely. Because they make CNN or they make it, everyone's talking about it and it's the front page news. But listen, I'm living my miracle every day for the past 10 years. I've been faithful. And, and I don't think people realize incrementally you can have a miracle, and you've had miracles. And that's what it's about.
And that's the beauty, I think, of your story. I was thinking about something you said, because there's a quote, and it says that the journey to obedience is terrifying, but you have to go anyway. And that's literally, that's kind of what you've done. You've pushed through the challenges so beautifully, to be honest, because like, if I was someone that was recently diagnosed or something like that, and if I heard your story, oh my God, I'm imagining the impact of your vulnerability in this book and how many lives that it will actually save. That's pretty powerful, how God will use you like that. So thank you for your obedience and getting it out. Yeah, because I can't wait to use it and then spread it to my friends and family that's struggling with certain things. Such an encouragement. So thank you so much for your obedience to that.
Thank you.
What I want to know, what's your favorite? Okay, it's probably hard to ask this question, but I was going to say, what was your favorite part of this journey of being an author?
I'd have to say just looking back over my life, because I start this story talking about my grandparents' church and the wonderment of God that I experienced as a child. And like I said, I think looking at God's hand over my life and the predestined, plan that he had for me, that is amazing. I'm awestruck, honestly. And I think seeing it all come together and sitting down and reading it, as, when I got it, I thought, I've read this so many times, manuscript form. I was like, I don't want to read it again. But when I sat down to read it, and I thought, wow, God has been more than faithful. And not one experience, even losing my dad, I talk about that, how it shaped me, how it changed me, and how I was sitting with him as a daughter, and how I was able to see my mother and how she responded, not knowing that I would be a wife who would have to respond. So I really talk about that, and just having it all come together. And what really humbles me is someone told me, if you want to be immortal, have children, write a book, or plant a tree. I said, oh,
that's so true.
Said, wow.
Yeah, that is so true.
Yeah,
oh my gosh.
So the legacy that, my children, my grandchildren, they will have, because I've actually put my faith out in a way, and the legacy of who I am, that to stand on that and have that out in the atmosphere, right, is something that is just, there's something exciting about it, right? You pull up, like my great grandmother, she was a person of faith. I feel like that legacy continues, and that was my dad. My dad, grandparents, it is the promise of God that is coming to fruition. So it's just I'm awestruck, to be honest.
What type of barriers did you face? And you can talk about the barriers to writing a book. Were there also any barriers to have to be that strong one to protect and to guard your husband while he was going through that as well? So maybe do both of those.
Yeah. So, being a caregiver or the health agent, the person who's disseminating information, making decisions with my husband, I did receive maybe a little, what do you call it? Little attitude here and there from people when I was, he can't have no visitors. We're not doing that. We're not, please don't ask us anymore. I had to draw some hard lines, and, people were like, well, that's mine, and honestly, I even had to get tough with some close to him. Like, he doesn't need that right now. He doesn't need someone to fall apart in his face, crying and exuberating this emotion as if he's already lost the battle, and so I don't think I was a favorite among people. I think, I probably was said to be rude, because sometimes people would ask me directly and I would say he's fine, but then that wasn't good enough. And I said, I'm not going to go into he's fine. We're fine. If you want to know anything, just know that God is good and keep praying. But to sit and want me to have, dialogue with you and unpack his everyday, or I'm not going to do that, and that didn't lend me a lot of friends in a closer knit circle. And then, a lot of things I didn't show up for. There were some barriers. I had to know my own limits, and I talk about that in the book. My oldest daughter, she was in high school, and, she was used to me showing up for everything, and I didn't learn this till later, but she was like, Mom, you missed my, whatever it was, band, and this is the final concert or something. And I said, but I made sure you got there. I made sure your life wasn't disrupted, but I knew that certain things just wasn't in my capacity, not my ability, just my capacity, and there were times where I just, I told family, I'm not going to be there, and I just need a moment, or, and so doing that, sometimes they didn't understand. They were like, well, you believe God and everything's fine. Yes, but I'm also a person who lives and breathes this, because when you leave your house, it's not in your face. I don't care how close you are, a best friend, his sister, his mom, you guys can step away from it and change your environment. And then like, oh, okay, you don't have to think about it. It's with me. It's with us 24/7 under our household. So sometimes I needed to take a break. I needed to not attend things, and people would just be like, oh, well, now you can't, and I was like, no, that's just not it. I'm going to send the kids.
Yes.
So, learning to work within those barriers, even learning to say, no, or when people ask me, since you want to ask me how I'm doing and do I need anything? I learned how to tell people, yes, I need you to take these girls to go get that school supply list, because I can't do it. It was just, I was tapped out, maintaining compliance and making sure. And I needed time to, if you would, go back in my closet, because it does wear down on you. And when you're trying to keep your kids' life normal, and we only told, the older ones to age appropriate level, and not even the gravity of it, because I did not want the rug pulled from under them. And I did not want, in their fragile states of trying to get through high school and everything, their life disrupted. I wanted to, as a mama bear, protect my kids. I didn't want them to have this weighing on them, because I know how it handled me, without my, even with my faith, I know how it set on me. So I didn't want that for them. And I wanted to show them what faith lived out looks like. Yeah. And so as they got older, they realized like, whoa, but what they're going to testify to is Mom lived that faith thing. We didn't even know, or we didn't even have, conversations around the table, or there was no, silence. And we thought, what are they talking about? And they don't want us to know. No, it was not something that consumed us. So in keeping those barriers and protecting my family, oftentimes I wasn't the favorite person at all. And I was a favorite.
Well, you know what? I think I remember something in the Bible that Jesus had to put folks out. I mean, I'm just saying, like, sometimes, like, it takes everything that you have within you to believe for this miracle. And so you have to protect yourself so that, the enemy won't get in there and try to introduce doubt. I mean, you're living with it 24/7. So I understand exactly where you were, where you had to stand your guard to protect. And look how God has blessed you guys. And it's how many years later, you said?
August 10th, 2023 will be 11 years.
Oh my God. Well, amazing.
Yes,
Wow.
and there's just, lab tests every month. He still takes oral chemotherapy, maintenance for him. We've had stem cell transplant. It's been a journey, but I told the Lord, I don't care what the deliverance look like. I know you're a healer. God made man, so he made this medicine. I pray over that medicine. Lord, let it do everything it's supposed to and nothing is not. It don't have to be deep. You know what I'm saying? I don't pretend to be deep. You know what I mean? I'm just sincere and I 100% believe it and I leave it alone. And I control what I can. What I can control is waking up every morning, going to work. And I tell people that all the time. If you've given it to God, then do the things that you have control over. Why compile this insurmountable devastation with now you don't have a job because you didn't get up. Now you got to move in with your mom and them with somebody because you didn't get up. And now, see, that's where I was like, no, my life, the things that I can control, if I gave God that, I got to do everything else that I've been doing. If not what I've been doing and more, because my life is continued. I'm planning for future. I'm not going to stop with this news because that's what the devil intended. He intended that day for us to just die and go downhill. And I was like, yeah, it's not happening. It's not.
No. Hey, look, you're dealing with a warrior right here. You can forget it. Hey, so let me ask you a little bit more about, like, for instance, you had mentioned about your husband and where he was. So how did you help him to stay in faith?
You know what? I think one thing about it is early on, and we would talk about, I would send him scriptures and I would say, you know what, I'm going to show him why this is applicable. And even looking up scripture that was related to the bones and the bone marrow, because that's where his cancer lives. And we would talk and we would dissect it. And it would be just a little bit. And I would talk to him and I would ask him questions. And because he does, have the faith, the same belief system, it wasn't a difficult conversation. But I think because he's a musician in church, not that they don't listen to the word, but normally when the word come on, they go outside and they take a break. I'm just telling you the truth. That's cute. When the pastor get up, they kind of like, they got a few minutes before they have to hop back on. So I teach them all the time. I say, you must not have been in church at this time when they taught this. But no, we have that. But I think being able to even dissect the word and pray together audibly, to hear from him and me pray and specifically for him, and along the way, I can tell, he's his own personal walk. I tell him all the time, this is my perspective, the story from my lens. You have your own. You have your own story that's being written, and it will be different from what I've written.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, he's quiet, but when he's an introvert, but when he talks about it, he's definitely intentional, and I hear the faith. Sometimes I hear him, and I'm like, "Who are you on the phone ministering to, telling him about?"
No, that's amazing, great. So I usually ask for my guests to give us 3 wisdom gems from your journey. So why don't you bless us with 3 of those wisdom gems?
The first thing I would say is don't let anyone deter your faith or make you feel that you're not wise for just having 100% faith. Sometimes people frown upon that and they say, you know what, that's great, but you're kind of in denial and, but don't let nobody tell you, you know what, he's going to show up because you have that faith. Faith without works is dead. Faith moves God, right? Without faith, the woman with the issue of blood was not made whole. So you need to have the audacity to have 100% faith, which is what I had. I was like, I have it. I don't care how he does it. I don't know how, when, and what. But I know he got it. So that's my testimony. That's it. That's the end all be all. Don't be ashamed to have that faith. 2 is that resilience. Resilience is built over time, in and through time. You don't have to think, okay, I need a whole lot of, determination and motivation. Take it one day at a time. I took it one day at a time. And before you know it, the days passed, right? And I really can't say that I had bad days, a lot of bad days. I really cannot, because I was intentional about doing the things that I can control. So when you're going through something, the thing that's already out of control, that already dropped and the bottom fell out, it's already happened. You can't do nothing about it. So let it do whatever it's going to do. but give it to God. Live in your faith, and then be intentional about controlling what you can. That's what you allow in your mental space, what you allow in your environment, who you allow and what you consume into your mind. Don't get on the internet. That's one thing I did. Stay off the internet, and be very intentional about what you consume, spiritually and naturally. And then the last thing is that when something like this happens and you've given it to God and you believe God, don't move too far from your normal. My husband might have a cancer diagnosis, but listen, he get on my nerves. We still argue. I don't treat him with kid gloves. I'm like, yeah, Lord healed you. You fine. Now we're going to get up here. We're going to do this. People would be thinking like, oh, you can't, he's fragile. The Lord healed him. He's good. We're good.
Oh my gosh.
We going on this trip and he going to have his face because he don't want to do nothing, but we going and he's going to be fine. It's fine.
That is so cute.
You don't have to treat your kids or, your sister, whoever's going through something. You don't have to treat them with kid gloves. Sometimes they need that. They need that, keep me normal, keep things, take my mind off of this. I'm the strongest person in this, tag team. So of course I got to be in the ring a little bit more than he does. So just know that it's okay to fight back and even to get that person who you tag team up with, say, look here.
I know, that's good. Yeah. No, that's really good. So I have a big question, because I know probably people are going to wonder, were there any moments, Natashia, that you just felt super weak? Where did you have that moment oh my gosh? And if you did, what did you do?
Oh, you gonna let me give away the secrets?
Not all of them. Just give a little taste. Just give a little. It's just if you're going through something that's very devastating, and do you ever, as a human, get just tired and not that you say it, but do you get to that point? And if you do, what do? You kind of told us what you do throughout as you were sharing your story. So just in case there's somebody that's on the horn right now that really are kind of at that breaking point of just ready to give up, any encouragement that you can give to them?
I'll start with let the tears fall. Let the tears fall. That is a natural way that God included in our bodies to get rid of, to free us of. And we see that as a sign of weakness. Let them fall. Don't worry about the source. Don't worry why you're crying. Don't figure it out. God knows. If you have to, and I promise you, some of the cleansing, most lifting times is when I just cried. And, even to this day, there are moments that I knew it felt dark, but when I cried and I let it till I couldn't cry no more, I probably was dehydrated, I cried. But to feel that everything was all right. That release, it's natural. I think people think because you cry, you've given up, you're giving in. It doesn't mean that. That's a natural release. So cry,
That's
cry,
awesome.
and don't quell it. Don't get a box of Kleenex and cry. Don't go with a clean, because that's, when you cry and you trying to wipe, you messing up what God is trying to do. Just release it.
Just let it flow.
Just let it flow. And I did it. And I still do it. I sometimes I say, I don't know why I'm crying, but God knows. Whatever to that point, he knows I'm at whatever point, whether it's fear, anxiety, whatever's in me that's boiled up to the point where all I have is tears, then that's what I have to let them fall.
That's pretty powerful. So Dr. Stafford Cotton. No, really, I want to know if how do people get in touch with you? If they want to know about what you're doing, if they definitely want to purchase the book. And wait, speaking of the book, when does it come out?
July 5th. July 5th. Yay! Right around the corner. So they can go to NatashIaStafford.com. Oh, I'm sorry, hold on. It's NatashIaStaffordCotton.com. And you'll see all things about me, more on my bio, more on events that I'm doing. And also the book is on Amazon, anywhere. Type it in your browser, any online retailer, thousands. If you go into your bookstore and it's not on the shelf, you can ask them and they'll order it for you. So keep your Kleenex I hope it's a movement. I hope people realize that you can tell people, hold on, let me finish crying. Don't interrupt my Kleenex. to offer me no Kleenex. Keep this Kleenex. But
I love that.
Talking to you. It's been great. We could just fellowship all day.
Yeah, no, we really can, because life happens, and I just really applaud you for how you are representing your story. Really, it's so powerful because, yes, it was devastating, but the way that you've talked about your story is so inspiring. Like, I'm super inspired after hearing.
Listen, it's not a dark read. I don't get into the woe it's me. So if people think that's what it is, it's not. It's 100%. Once we got the diagnosis, hit the ground running. Never to look back, and very deliberate, very intentional about that. So it is uplifting.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for your life and your legacy, your husband, your family. I can't wait to see what God is going to do with this whole thing, because I just see you guys.
I even put photos in here. I put photos in there of the family, so you can see.
Oh, that's good. Good. Well, thank you for coming on the show, and I'm going to have you back after you get the book out for a little bit, and we need to do some of the reading in there and unpack some of the sections. So thank you for coming on the show, and if you guys want to get in touch with Dr. Natashia, I'm going to leave the information in the description on YouTube, and so you can reach out to her then. So thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you.